Okay, a very quick update on the status of Trashman, month 11. Managed to do some more work on how the content is created in Blender to streamline that a little bit so it's a little bit easier. I've created a new house, a second house, to test the process and how it all works in Godot. And I've managed to get some basic controls and collision detection working in Godot. So starting off in Blender, see how things have changed in there. So this is the house that I showed you last time, very simple house that I created to represent one of the houses from the original game. I mentioned in the last video that when I moved this house over to the other side of the road, the lighting would be wrong because it was just flipping by scaling in X negatively. So the lighting on this roof would be wrong. So I needed to work out a way of actually rendering multiple versions of the house from different views. So the way I've come up with for that is to use a combination of scenes, which is a Blender feature, so you can have multiple scenes in a Blender file, and view layers, which allows you to control what can be seen on each layer. So in terms of scenes, I have the left and right. So if I switch to the right house, you see all you've got in here is all of the models and necessary parts for the right view with the flipped path and everything. The lighting remains the same. The light is consistent across both scenes. It's shared, so I can move the light and change the light, and it'll be copied across. And then within each scene, I've got 4 layers. So all of it is what it looks like with everything enabled, and this is in Eevee. But if I switch to cycles, which is the render engine I'm using now because it gives a much better lighting effect, you can see what the house would look like in a cycles render. It's a bit slow, but it works. And then you've got the 3 individual render types that are required for use in Godot. So I've got basically just the house, so that would just render the house, and if I went to the camera view, that's what it would look like. I've got the shadow only, which shows that it's the shadow, and this is enabled because it's a holdout, which is something else you can do with view layers. Only if you're in cycles, you can identify certain collections within here as being marked as a holdout in a certain view, so it makes it very easy to do things like generate that shadow view. And then there's the path only, which is just what the path will render. It's very simple at the moment, but I can add some nice textures and maybe some decoration and so on that layer as I get more time. So that's how it would work on there. So you'd render those 3, and then I'd go to right and render the 3 there as well. And that just makes it really easy. And anything I need that's common across the 2, I can just share between the scenes. So the light at the moment is the only thing that's shared between the scenes, so I have a consistent lighting model. All the render settings and so on is copied as well. So that's how it works in Blender, and I've rendered those out. I've also got a second house, which I'll show you in Godot rather than in Blender because it's a bit easier. So this is how it works now in Godot. There's a little bit more going on here than there was before. So each house, which is a tile that goes down the side of the road, contains a number of different things now. So it's got a grass area, which you can see there. It's a combination of, let me just turn the house off so you can see a little bit better, and the fences. So it's a combination of a polygon, a simple polygon at the moment, which I'll add some texture and detail to later, but also, more importantly, a collision shape. So this is basically an area 2D with a custom script on it that identifies the ground type, and you'll see why in a moment. So that I can choose the ground type for that area from these 4 or more as I create them. So in the script you can see I've got the ground types defined there. So that's the grass. Then you've got the fences, which again are very simple. In this particular house they're just simple polygons, but they're a static object rather than area 2D, so they will actually cause the player to collide with them and prevent it going through. And there's 2 fences, one for either side of the path. And then we got the house itself, which is a combination of the house. Let me just turn the other things off so you can see a bit better what's going on. So this is the house itself, and then you've got the path, which contains its own path area, which also contains the same script and identifies the ground type as path, and the collision polygon that you can see there. I didn't bother cutting out the inside of the path because the collision volume of the house will prevent you ever getting in there, so there was just no point. That's the path, and then you've got the shadow. If I turn that off, you can see we've got the shadow pass, which it does cut off a little bit here because I made the images a bit smaller, but it doesn't notice in the real world, so I'm quite happy with that. And then we've got the static body, which is the collision space for the house that the player will collide with. So if you turn that on, you can see it prevents collision in there, but allows you to walk around the back of the house, which I can show in a moment. So that's how a typical house block works. I've got that one. I've got the this is the house 2, the bungalow with the 2 sides. Also design borrowed from the original game. And then we've got the one flipped on the right, and the house 2 on the right, and then there's a basic grass tile for use just in between houses. Some of the levels have spacing between the houses with like a little field or a play area. So bringing those together to a rough approximation of level 1, with the 3 houses up this side and the 2 houses in the grass block in the middle here, shows how it all comes together. The other thing I've got in here is you can see there's a yellow and a purple square. These are for the camera. So the camera is actually connected to the character who's here at the moment. So if it's underneath the character, it allows me to, the camera 2D allows me to follow the character around, but with some controls. So what you see with the yellow square is the limits that the camera will go to. So if the player goes, the camera will stay centered on the player unless that means the camera view goes outside of these limits. So that allows me to prevent the camera from going outside of what I've defined. You'll see that in action in a minute. And there's some things like smoothing and so on, which make it feel a little bit better. Lots to tweak on that. I've also added a very simple GUI and a ground type here, which you'll see in action in a minute. So these roads and pavements, the road and the pavement parts, are also using the same script for ground type. So I can define that as a road, as you can see here, and each of the pavement sides are defined as pavement, and they're separate to path. So now if we quickly play, cursor keys to move around, you can see up in the top corner here, it lists the ground types that I'm over at the moment. So I'm currently on the pavement, on the road, and I'm currently on grass and path, which is fine because the path will take priority. Only if you're on the grass and not on the pavement will you start to be penalised, so that makes it easy to determine. The collisions work. I can't walk through the house there. You can see he gets goes into shadow when walking through the shadow pass, and can walk around the back of the house, and all the collisions seem to work fine. You can't walk through the fence, but you can walk through the gate. And similarly over the other side of the road we've got the second type of house, which all seems to work too. Shadows, collisions and everything. And then the flipped version of the 2 houses there. So next up will be to animate the character, add the trash cans and the cars. I found some nice cars that I'm going to try working with, and get some of the game logic working. Hopefully with most of these pieces in place, it'll be fairly smooth running from here on in to start creating the content and hooking everything up.